Okay, thank you, Eduardo. So good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this regional meeting, the Western consultation of the Global Agenda for Sustainable Livestock. My name is Nancy Bourgeois. I'm the Academia and Research Coordinator, together with Rogerio Martins Mauricio, member of the Academia and Research Cluster of the Global Agenda for Sustainable Livestock. And I will be moderating this session today and tomorrow with the support from Eduardo Arce Diaz and Lavinia Scudiero from the support team, agenda support team in Rome at the FAO, and with the support from Fritz Schneider, the former chair of the Global Agenda for Sustainable Livestock and member of the task force organizing the regional chapters and also the multi-stakeholder meeting, which will take place later in Ireland in October. Eduardo, may I ask you to screen the short presentation for the introduction? Thank you. So this meeting is recorded, and if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, and we will answer them also during the panel discussion later on this morning after the experts' inputs. So as you have seen from the program, this regional chapter, which is actually the third edition of these regional chapters we had last year and 2 years ago, this Western Europe meeting will take place today and tomorrow morning from 9:30 to approximately 11:45. And the aim of the consultation, actually for all the chapters, not only for the Western Europe one, is to focus on actions and stakeholders' commitments towards sustainable livestock solutions in all the three spheres of the GASL's theory of change. So the sphere of control, the sphere of influence, and the sphere of interest. I will come back to that. And also focusing on the 4 sustainability domains that you see here. So the livelihood and economic growth, food and nutrition security, animal health and animal welfare, as well as climate and natural resource use. The invitation for this meeting has been sent to over 200 people, I believe, and as far as I know, about 40 have registered for today and tomorrow, so we will see how many come in the end. Eduardo, next slide, please. So here you see today's program. The focus of today will be mostly on countries, so specific countries with insights into the situation in Switzerland, in Sweden, in Ireland, and then also the Europe focus later on by Andrea Rosati from the European Federation of Animal Science. And Fritz will report about this, about today's session at the end of the meeting. Tomorrow, next slide, please, Eduardo. So tomorrow will be more about different stakeholders' views, so the private sector with Nestle, also the different private partners from the Sustainable Agriculture Initiative platform, International Meat Secretariat, and views from breeders in France with Emmanuel, and we will end also with a panel discussion like today, and reports from Fritz, and closing remarks from our chair Shirley. And next slide, please, Eduardo. So that's the last slide from my end. So here, more details about these 3 spheres of interest, influence and control, so the spheres of GASL in the theory of change. And here you see actually what we are supposed to come up with. And so results from the insights of today and tomorrow from our key speakers or experts. Their views and their findings will actually feed into this matrix, and we will be reporting at the end of this Western consultation, and our report will serve as a preparation for the national or for the annual multi-stakeholder meeting, which will take place later on in October in Ireland. And all the findings from all regional chapters, so in Asia, Latin America, Africa, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Oceania will feed into this annual meeting in October. I will not go into details about these metrics, but some of you have already given some inputs that we can feed directly so that we can actually inform GASL next steps towards a more sustainable livestock production. Thank you, Eduardo. Now I would give the floor to our chair, Shirley Tarawali, who is also the Assistant Director General of the International Livestock Research Institute, ILRI. Shirley, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Nancy, and a very warm welcome to everybody. Thank you very much for joining this virtual meeting, Livestock Sector Actions Towards More Sustainable Food Systems. This, as Nancy said, the Western Europe consultation of the 2022 Global Agenda for Sustainable Livestock Multi-Stakeholder Partnership Meeting. It's an opportunity for a diversity of livestock sector experts, civil society representatives, government officials, livestock keepers, and other stakeholders from Western Europe to meet online to identify the priorities of the livestock sector in this region as a major contributor to the sustainability of food systems. I'm sure many of you know the Global Agenda for Sustainable Livestock is a multi-stakeholder partnership that strives to bring together all typologies of livestock sector stakeholders, from smallholders to commercial and everything in between, different organizations, NGOs, governments, academia, public and private sector, civil society and multilateral organizations. It aims to assemble evidence, foster dialogue and consensus around livestock-related issues, particularly the contentious ones, I should say, and to support practice and policy change towards sustainable livestock solutions that contribute to wider development ambitions. And Nancy just articulated those 4 big areas. Today's meeting is one of 8 regional consultations. It's actually the 2nd out of the 8 that will be taking place between June and August before we have a global hybrid meeting of the Global Agenda in early October in Dublin, Ireland. And I know we have our colleagues from Ireland joining us today. We're very much looking forward to that opportunity and that hosting. So regional meetings such as this really provide an opportunity for participants to take stock of livestock sector achievements, single out perhaps some challenges, and identify priority actions that will contribute to reaching sustainable food systems and achieving these sustainable development goals through that attention to evidence, dialogue, and changes in policy and practice. The global meeting in October will be the first time we've had a face-to-face opportunity for many years, but we also encourage online participation, and we're doing our best to make sure that the meeting will be set up to facilitate maximum engagement, whether you're in the room or you're online. So I really encourage you to look out for the registration for that and to plan to be there in one form or another, because it will be an opportunity to bring together the outputs from regional consultations such as this in the context of the challenges that the livestock sector must face and the actions it must take towards greater sustainability. And the meeting will also consider achievements, so the examples from regional meetings such as this, so as to emphasize and contextualize the diversity, as well as making forward-looking commitments to future actions that are essential for livestock to contribute to the future food systems as we describe in our Global Agenda vision. And that says, by 2030, sustainable, inclusive, resilient, and diverse livestock systems across the world contribute significantly to sustainable development goals and are integral to sustainable food systems. So we really want to have a lot of engagement, consultation, and inputs so that we get a good sense of what's happening, what achievements have been made towards livestock sector sustainability, and also an opportunity to commit to future action, because we know that every sector does need to commit to greater sustainability. Because for livestock, we recognize, as I said, with every sector, there's a need to change, but that what that change looks like towards future ambitious food systems is as diverse as the sector itself. So we need to keep that in mind during today's discussions and going forward, the need for change and the diversity of pathways towards those changes and that greater sustainability, so that we do find powerful ways that the livestock sector can contribute towards food systems that are stronger, more sustainable, equitable, and so on. Thanks to the organizers, Nancy, Fritz, and others, and to all of you for joining. I hope you'll have a stimulating and thought-provoking, but also action-oriented discussion, and one that will continue over the coming weeks and months. And I do hope to meet you, some of you in person and some online, in October, to bring your deliberations into the global context. I'm sorry I can't stay with you for the entirety of your meeting. I'll join in any moment I can. So have a great meeting. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Shirley, for this nice introduction and for setting the scene to today's and tomorrow's meeting. So thanks a lot. Now I would like to welcome Daniel Brecher. He's from AgroSport, so the Federal Research Institute for Agriculture in Switzerland. Daniel is a member of the Climate and Agriculture Group, if I'm right. And Daniel, please, the floor is yours. I believe you will share the presentation yourself, right?
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. And thank you for the opportunity to present here my work. I'll try to share the screen. So can everybody see the screen now? Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so as Nancy mentioned, I work at AgroScope, Federal Research Institution for Agriculture in Switzerland, and I'm working in the field of greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture since about 15 years. And it's a pleasure to share with you here some of the lessons learned for more sustainable food systems. I will start with the overall context. So if we look at the national greenhouse gas inventory in Switzerland, we see that agriculture has a share of about 13% of overall greenhouse gas emissions. But if we look at it from a food consumption perspective, we can see that food consumption is responsible for 20% of greenhouse gas emission or greenhouse gas footprint of households in Switzerland. And about 80% of all these emissions are coming from livestock husbandry. And within livestock husbandry, we see that ruminants, and particularly dairy cows, contribute 80 to 90%. And in Switzerland, this is because most of the agricultural area in Switzerland is natural grassland. So 3/4 of agricultural land in Switzerland is grassland. If we want to use that for food production, we can only do that with ruminants. Now, these emissions must be reduced, and Switzerland has a climate strategy for agriculture. And we have two main goals. One is to reduce emissions by at least 1/3, and if possible by 2/3 until 2050. And at the same time, we want to increase or maintain at least production. So from calorie production side, it looks fairly good. And here's the development of greenhouse gas emissions. And we see during the 1990s, we had a decline of emissions. This is mainly due to efficiency gains, efficiency in milk production, but also nitrogen use efficiency could be increased. And now if we go to lower and middle income countries, this would probably be the most promising strategy to further increase efficiency in production. But if we go to like Western European countries, or more industrialized countries, we commonly see these pictures that ongoing from the year 2000, more or less, that emissions didn't decline anymore, and we have more or less stable emissions. This is not only true for greenhouse gas emissions, it's also, we can observe that in other environmental impacts, such as ammonia, for instance. And so currently we have an emission gap here, and we have to take further efforts to reduce emissions. And if we want to reach net zero in 2050, we also have to compensate these remaining emissions by negative emission technologies. So this is quite a big challenge. And to do that, we have a set of, or we continuously explore mitigation measures. So here again, we see more or less the target of the Swiss climate strategy for agriculture. And we have reduction measures in the area of soil carbon, nitrogen use efficiency, feeding strategy, herd management, housing and manure management, energy, and then the demand side measures. So these are all the measures again. If you're interested in more details, I invite you to consult the reference list at the end of my talk, or to contact me directly. Now, I have to mention a few points here. For most of these measures, we did not consider any constraints nor costs. So there might be political constraints, social, cultural constraints, lack of resources, etc., negative side effects that hinder implementation of these measures in practice. Furthermore, it's not always possible to stack these bars one on top of each others, because some of them are exclude each others, others they can be stacked, but not all of them. So also from this picture, we see that it's quite a challenge to reach these targets. And since quite some time, we have now a few pilot projects all over Switzerland that try to implement these measures in on the farms. So this is the map of Switzerland, and all over we see here some of the most important of these projects, from research institutions, from individual cantons, farmers associations, from the food industry, etc. And the darker the color, the older the project. And in red, you see here the tools that are used to track progress, to make the farm greenhouse gas balance and track progress over the time. So I want quickly to highlight three of these projects. The Agro Concept project, it has a target to reduce emission by 20%. And after 7 to 8 years, now we see all over a slight increase of emissions. The R Milk project, that's a dairy producer, they have the target to reduce emission by 10%. After 4 to 5 years, we see a reduction of 4 to 8%. That's mainly due to efficiency gains. And one of the biggest projects, the IP Suisse project, it's a large farmers association in Switzerland. They have a pointing system where farmers can implement measures and then get a certain amount of points, and they have to reach a minimum amount of points to be eligible for a price premium. This initiative just started the implementation phase, but from the ex-ante assessment of the measures they want to implement, we can see that with these measures, they could maybe achieve 0 to 6% of emission reductions. So now, I really want to mention that all these projects, they have very committed people, very engaged farmers. They make a big effort. They have a lot of support from the scientific institutions. They're very well financed. There's lots of money in it, and still we see very moderate progress here. So, and this we haven't found yet And that made us think if we do have the right approach so far. So we did some consideration of what is a climate-friendly production system, after all. And if you come to sustainability, you usually find the three dimensions: the ecological, the economical, and the social dimension. Now, the economic dimension and the social dimension, these are purely man-made. We can change our social system, we can change our economy, it's just in our heads. But if it comes to ecology, then we find that the boundaries of the ecosystems, these are set by natural laws, they're not negotiable. And that's why we think that this has to be the foundation of all our considerations. And so based on that, we have to develop a sustainable land use and biomass strategy. That means we need site-specific land use and agricultural production that respect these ecosystem boundaries. So locally adapted crop culture species, crop rotations, and site-adapted livestock density that consider, and this is very important, feed-food competition and area competition. So that would mean arable land primarily for direct human consumption, natural grassland for ruminants, and monogastric livestock primarily on-site products from the food industry. And then we also would need an optimal use of biomass. Now this defines what we can produce in a sustainable manner. And on top of that, now we have to think of how do we consume. So sustainable and healthy consumption and diet is important. We should reconsider the price setting mechanisms. So true cost accounting would be important. Then we have to minimize food loss and waste. We need adequate communication and adequate food processing, trade, and retailing. And now once we have defined this foundation, then we can think of how we can optimize farm management. And this has to occur within the adequate framework and structures that are given by these foundations. Currently, I think we take not enough account of this foundation, and that's why we run into troubles with lock-in situation, rebound mechanism backfire, and we are operating generally in a unsustainable system. And that can be prevented if we take more account of this foundation down here. So this might look like as an enormous challenge. A lot of people are afraid of that. But if we look at nature of things, it's all change is very natural. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we did produce and consume food totally different than today. And if we apply a long-term perspective into the future, then we can see that in 20 or 30 years, we will definitely consume and produce food totally different today. But we can set the course how this change is going to look like today, and that's what we have to do. So it's we don't have to be afraid of these changes, of these challenges. We can see it as an opportunity towards a more sustainable future. And I was very pleased to read in the invitation letter to this meeting the statement, leaving no one behind. I think that's a very important signal that we give to everybody, that we're into this all together and nobody's gonna be left behind. So, and we can see this challenge as an opportunity and chance, not only as a threat. And I briefly give you show you one of our studies at Agroscope that shows how such a food system could look like. And this is again for greenhouse gas emissions, but they analyzed also other environmental impacts, and the picture looks more or less the same always. So that would be here the reference diet we have today in Switzerland. And if we change to an alternative diet, we can reduce emissions by 50%. And if we reduce food waste, we can even go further down. Now, this is not an exotic diet. It's not vegan. It's not even vegetarian. It's a diet according to the recommendations of the public health institutions. And as we've seen, a greenhouse gas footprint can be reduced by 50%. We would have to reduce cattle population by 40%, yes, but we still would use the complete grassland area in Switzerland and maintain all the benefits of it in terms of biodiversity, soil carbon, etc. But we would reduce the area of silage mice considerably. And this brings again this very important point here, feed, food, and area competition. It would have a considerable health benefits, and that's also a very important point, I think, in times of global crisis, health crisis, armed conflicts. Everybody talks about self-sufficiency, food security. With such a system, we could increase self-sufficiency in Switzerland from today 60% to 80%. So I think that's also a very important aspect. I leave the conclusions for you to read later. And with this, I thank you very much for your attention. As I mentioned here, you find at the end of my slides the list of references. And you can always contact me under this email address if you have further questions. And with this, I'm looking forward to the discussion later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for these insights into the Swiss situation. Very sobering results if we consider what has been achieved so far and the constraints, but at the same time, very hopeful perspectives, considering that we have means to change the system. So thank you very much, Daniel. And I remind the audience that if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat, and we will answer them later during the panel discussion. So now I would like to welcome Ulf from the Swedish University. Ulf is a doctor of veterinary medicine. I hope you are here. Yes, Ulf. Please, the floor is yours. Welcome, Ulf.
Thank you, Nancy, and good morning, everyone. I will share my screen to start here. Like that. You see it?
Just put it in.
Yeah, I'm on my way.
Okay.
Let's see. There we are. So,
yes, perfect.
Just a little bit of a background. I regarded this as the task here to give a kind of situation for the whole country, which is absolutely impossible for all dimensions of sustainability. My background then is I'm at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, working in the livestock sector, obviously. I'm also a passive member of the Swedish Farmers Association, so I reading their weekly newspaper and following the debate there very clearly. I'm in general research circles in Sweden with different agencies and authorities where we discuss sustainability issues, and so this is the input I've got for these reflections on social, economic, and environmental sustainability in Sweden. As a starting point, I should say that also, as in most Western countries, the environmental sustainability is totally dominating in the discussion. And I think, especially for the livestock sector and for the farming sector, the social and economic sustainability is almost neglected, I would say. So, saying this, no, I cannot move my, there it is, sorry. I will try to put forward some of the aspects of the livestock sector. We have a very high productivity in the livestock sector in Sweden, and these are some numbers, some averages you can see here. And as the previous speaker said also, that this kind of productivity is a key to have resource use, if good resource use efficiency and low greenhouse gas emissions per produced kilo of whatever. And I think on a global scale, this is one of the most important aspects, but we are quite well off in this, I think. And then another dimension is animal welfare. We have standards or regulations that are well above the EU standards. As an example, cow must be on pastures for 60 days in the summer. The weaning age of piglets is minimum 28 days. So we are quite advanced there as well, I think. Environmental demands regulations are also very rigorous. I don't have any benchmarking figures here for you, but it's a lot of inspections on different levels from the authorities and so, and I have a small farm myself, I can witness on that. And then also the use of antibiotics. I think it's the lowest per biomass in the EU. It's compared to other Northern European countries like Denmark and Netherlands. It's just 30 and 22% of that use in Denmark and Netherlands. Comparing to Southern European countries like Spain and Italy, it's 7 and 6% of that. And the reason for this is of course that we have very, very skilled farmers that manage to keep the animals healthy. It's a long-term disease prevention or health supporting activities on the farms over of several years that have reduced the need for antibiotics like this. So the tendency has been, how to say, that the low use of antibiotics is a kind of side effect. So these are some aspects of the sustainability. Another one that is important to know about, we eat about 80 kilos per meat per person per year, which is a little bit below the EU average, which is 85 kilos, I think. And you can see that the domestic share of the market in Sweden has, I think one could see a trend slightly upwards for several of the traits here. Egg is going down though, but it changed a little bit here towards a more I'd say the increase of the domestic share. We joined the European Union here in 1995, and then you see it dropped because we imported more and more food. But there is a movement quite a lot, mainly I think for animal welfare aspects, that a segment, the middle class, is preferring Swedish produced animal source foods. And here a little bit about the farm structures so you can see how it looks. The blue bars here is the number of dairy farms in Sweden in 1975 and 2017, and the yellow is the number of cows per farm. I think we see the whole this tendency in most Western countries, fewer and larger farms, and it's the same for pigs. It's also the number of pig herds are reduced by half, more than half, for the last 10 years, and the number of sows also reduced considerably, but it's the size have increased of the farms. So these are social economic aspects of the sustainability of the Swedish livestock sector that I want to put forward. And importantly, I think it's the animal source foods are challenged, both from the climate side, so to say, and the animal rights and also welfare aspects. This is a main debate in Sweden, and also some governmental organizations, agencies, and so, and also some universities have taken quite radical and I feel inappropriate decisions that they should just serve vegetarian food and so, and I think that is kind of dictatorship that you should not have in a liberal Western democracy. And so, of course, we could and should, I think, this is my personal opinion, that we should reduce the intake of or the share of animal source foods in our diets. We can do that without harming our health. And this is a very sad aspect, I think. There are these criminal animal rights activists that harass farmer families, their children in school and so. And originally the authorities, the police, the law, the whole law enforcement system, and also the people in the parliament were kind of neglecting this, because it was kind of serving a good to reduce the number of farms and so. Maybe this is a little bit overdoing from my side, but it has changed now, and people think that this is a bad thing, which is indeed is, but it's ongoing. So some positive things then, to try to pick up tendencies. The biodiversity concept, if I put it like that, is really getting ground in Sweden, and then the natural pastures are good. People starting to realize that livestock is not only a bad thing, so to say. So that is a change in attitude, I think. Yeah, this is a typical Swedish pastures and Swedish red cows, which are durable and high producing. And then also it has become a sympathy for the farmers because of these animal rights activists' terror. So I think that is a kind of change in the attitude within the society. Then we have had over the very recent years two big game changers, and one is this coronavirus that started to realize that we, like in all countries in the world, that the just-in-time thing doesn't work, or it's very vulnerable with imports of things or delivery of products and so. And we are in Sweden, we are what we call it the peace disturbed, in the sense that we have not been in war for 200 years. So we think that cannot happen. So we had a very poor contingency planning, I think. And people started talking about food security, realizing that food is not produced or to come from the grocery stores in the cities. It's actually produced somewhere. So that sort of started changing the thinking in the public, and I think that is true for most countries. And then we had another game changer, the Russian aggression in Ukraine and all the terrible things that happening there. And it's the same with the contingency planning. The food security again becomes an issue, and also energy prices. The diesel prices, for instance, is very high, and that is in particular. So these two things together have changed the whole mentality of the society, I think, as in most countries. So some of the consequences of this, the downside is, of course, the diesels and fertilizers prices are increasing. And especially pig and egg producers are particularly exposed to these increased feed prices, since they not always produce their own feed. And according to a very recent poll, 25% of them considering downsizing, and maybe that is temporarily, or if it will be for forever. And if you don't regard me as too cynic, there's also an upside of this. The grain producers are, of course, the winners. They get double the price compared to last year. But most importantly, and this is a statement from the chair of the Swedish Farmer Association, and I think it's very true, that farming or food production is not a special interest any longer. It was regarded as by the politicians in the past, and the society as a whole. But it has become a societal public concern that food security is something that affects us all, and I think that is a good thing in this very dark era we are living in now. So with this, I want to thank you, and this is a message to our Swiss hosts that there are also nice mountains in Sweden. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ulf. Thank you very much for showing the two other pillars, or putting more accent on the two other pillars of the sustainability, the social and the economic one, not to forget about them. Thanks a lot, Ulf. Now we move to Ireland with Dale from the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. Welcome, Dale. You will give us insights into a national program, I believe.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Very good. I will try and share my screen now. So I think it's this one from beginning. So you can see that?
Yes.
Okay.
There is some delay with the slideshow, I guess. I still don't see the first. We see a different slides, not the first one.
What are you seeing now on the screen?
Small, something moving. Maybe you have to redo the slideshow again.
What do we see?
Because I think we see also the notes.
Okay. Resume slideshow on. I'm working off two screens here, so it's working on my screen. Wait till I try and.
Maybe that's the issue.
Stop sharing.
Maybe you have to move to the single screen, not duplicate, or I don't know which mode.
I'm going to try that now, maybe. Is that the same or is it any different? Are you still seeing the small screen with the notes on it?
Yes, it's still the same. Or shall Eduardo screen it from Rome?
The PDF, he could try screen the PDF, yeah.
Yes,
It
we
might
tried
work.
it before, it worked with the PDF, so maybe Eduardo.
Yeah, wait, I'll stop.
Eduardo, can you screen the PDF? Oh, now it works.
Yeah, you can see that okay?
Yes, more or less.
Yeah, it's just a little bit, if we could reduce the resolution maybe on the screen,
Now
yeah,
it's
like
okay.
that. Yeah.
Now it's okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so Eduardo will have to adjust the slide. So look, yeah, sorry about that, colleagues. Good to be with you this morning. My name is Dale Crammond. I work in the Ministry of Agriculture and Climate Change Division. And for my sins, I have, yes, agreed to work with FAO and GASL to host the global MSP meeting in October. So Shirley and Eduardo have already had a productive visit to Ireland recently, and we're very excited about putting together an exciting program for everyone, and we look forward to welcome you all to Dublin in October. Today's presentation, I wanted to it was interesting. It's a program called Origin Green. It's our sustainability program, and it's 10 years old, and it ties in nicely with GASL. So I wanted to give you a run through. So next slide, please, Eduardo. So Board BIA, who are an agency of my department, we have two agencies, one called Chagas, one called Board BIA, working in this space. Board BIA's job objective is to market Irish food produce all over the world. So we export 90% of the food we produce in Ireland, and we export it to 180 countries all over the world. So exports are incredibly important for Ireland. Last year, we exported food products to the value of 13.5 billion. Board B is 28 years old, a relatively small organization with 154 staff, but they certainly, punch above their weight in terms of, the impact they have, in terms of how they engage with over 1,400 client companies in 180 markets around the world. Next slide, please, Eduardo.
Eduardo, can you move to the next slide?
Oh, we've lost again. Technology is great when it works. When it doesn't, it's difficult.
Eduardo, we don't see the presentation anymore.
I just turned off my other screen, and I'm going to try and PowerPoint slideshow.
So I'm not sure who screens it now.
It's my screen, but you're still seeing just the small.
No, we see everything, but it's from the beginning. So you move to
okay.
Go ahead,
Dave.
So that's okay now. It's working
now it
there.
Works. Yes.
Okay.
Now it
works. So so where am I? So Origin Green, is it's a national food and drink sustainability program. Just one second. My problem now is I can't see the slides on my screen. Wait to see if I put it back up on the other screen. Are you still seeing it now? Okay.
Yes, it's perfect.
Good.
Now you
okay.
are
Now
slide 3.
Yeah, I can see it now. I can see it now.
Okay.
So, okay, folks. Yeah. So look, Origin Green, yeah, it's a sustainability program. So back in 2010 or 2012, when we set up this program in the ministry, we could see this coming. We could see the requirements in the marketplace in relation to sustainability. And ultimately, this is driven by the marketplace and the consumer, and Ireland wanting to remain, I suppose, ahead of the curve, if you like, given that we export 90% of what we produce. It's incredibly important for us that we're very, very in tune with what the marketplace is demanding. And we saw this coming, that, you know, consumers were becoming more in tune with where their food was coming from, how it was being produced, animal health and welfare standards, the whole area of greenhouse gas emissions, water quality, etc., etc. So we set up this program, and effectively all the things down on the right-hand side are covered, like on-farm, energy, emissions, biodiversity, water, etc., etc. It also then covers not just our on-farm producers, it also covers our companies at a processing level. So we brought our companies in as well. So all our big agri-food companies that are you know, processing all our food and ultimately exporting it, they're under the Origin Green umbrella also. Sorry, apologies, folks. It's gone for me again.
Dale, you have the arrow and the bottom to the left on the slide. If you hover over that one.
It's just resume slideshow. Resume slideshow. It's just the screen. Yeah, the presentation was coming up on my second screen, but now it has stopped again. Okay, got it now. So look, the food vision then, back in 2000 and last year in 2021, we also launched our fourth or fifth food strategy called Food Vision 2030. So Food Vision 2030 is our overarching sustainable food strategy, and it looks to take a food systems approach for the first time. So what we mean by a food systems approach, it is looking kind of at all aspects of the food system from an economic and environmental and a social and a health perspective. And we want to transition, you know, our food system to take account, you know, of all these very, very important aspects. And Origin Green will be kind of a key part of this, and fits very much within mission 1 of our Food Vision 2030 strategy, which is a climate smart, environmentally sustainable agri-food sector. Now, finally, everything's working fine. So Origin Green at a farm level, I've already said that the system works very much at a farm level and a company level. So at a farm level, we audit our farms every 18 months. So it's accredited to an international ISO standard 17065. And an inspector goes out onto the farm, produces a report for the farmer based on all the things we talked about, like how much fertilizer he's using, his grass, his energy usage, etc., etc. A report is given to the farmer, and he or she is set a challenge to improve that over the next 18 months before the next audit. So there's something, they're given really, really detailed feedback on how they can improve the sustainability on their farm. Similarly then at a company level, it's a 3 to 5 year sustainability plan. and manufacturers establish 4 to 8 targets within kind of a suite of targets, the ones that are kind of, most important to their processing system, because you can imagine some processing systems are different to others. This is the carbon footprinting on farm that I was mentioning. The inspector will go out and he will look at all these things from the grazing season, fertilizer, feed, manure, housing, chemicals, energy, water, and biodiversity. All that information then is brought into a database. To date, we've done about 300,000 carbon assessments on beef and dairy farms in Ireland. And we've seen on average a 6.3% reduction in the unit of beef in terms of kilogram of output, CO2 emissions per kilogram of output, and the same, a 6% reduction on the milk side also. On the farm feedback reports, as I said, these are the reports that are given to the farmer, at the end of the inspection. So he has a record of where he has, and the farmer can constantly refer back to this report. It's online also. So there's a strong record of where the farmer is, so they know how they can improve in terms of the targets they have been set for them by the Origin Green inspector. So it's at a company level then, as I said, originally the program was launched at a farm level and it was focused on the primary producer, but we felt there was an opportunity to incorporate, the whole agri-food sector from a processing perspective also. So we brought in, as I say, the processing companies also, and that has worked very well. The vast majority of our processing companies now in the agri-food space are all members of Origin Green. And again, very much looking at those scope 1 emissions, and 2 and 3, what can they do in terms of their energy emissions, water, waste, packaging, the social aspect of it, the health and nutrition of their employees, employee well-being, etc. That's all kind of, a key part of the overall sustainability message of the Irish agri-food sector. So Board B have also then, published a number of documents to kind of enable the resources that can help the farmer along the way in terms of pathways to net zero, pathways to the circular economy, which is more relevant to industry, pathways to nature restoration and resilience. So how can farmers, practically improve their biodiversity on farm at a very basic level? So the Board B program, collaborates, very much at a global level, and because this is a global program in terms of the objective it has in terms of selling, helping us sell products all over the world. We work very closely with the Carbon Trust in the UK, who are an auditor of the program. Obviously, there's other initiatives we're involved in also. And then at a local level in Ireland, it's like the entire, agri-food sector. So Animal Health Ireland, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Dairy Industry Ireland, every kind of organization, Dairy Sustainability Ireland, they're all involved in this program and helping the farmers. And that's something that works very well because collectively everyone has bought into the program, and ultimately that's why it's been successful. We also then have an Origin Green Ambassador program, particularly for graduates who are starting out, who've just qualified from university. So what we do, we place graduates in companies all over the world. Whether that be McDonald's, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, etc., Cargill in the US. And what that does is it gives us, a great understanding of the sustainability journey, these companies are on, and we can take those learnings and bring them back. And ultimately, these graduates that go through this program end up working in the Irish agri-food industry in some capacity. And we've learned an awful lot through this program over the last 10 years. Origin Green then is also very much linked to our commitments under the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Something obviously we need to kind of watch very closely as a food industry, in terms of, you know, that zero hunger objective, and how that whole area of reducing food waste, etc., in a company, all those things are going to kind of play a key role in contributing to the achievements of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So this is just a slide, you know, just showing some of the, you know, the links, a lot on social media, an awful lot on trade shows and events. You know, the Origin Green logo is quite well known, you know, in all the big trade shows around the world, and in Dubai, in Germany, in the US, etc. So it's something that, you know, we want to grow and grow that kind of understanding of the Origin Green program, and ultimately what it means and what it's doing for Irish agriculture. So as I said, yeah, look, it's its birthday this year. It's 10 years old, which aligns nicely with GASL. So 90% of the food exports that we produce in Ireland now are covered by the Origin Green program. So 55,000 farms, 300 of our processing companies. We've 71% of Origin Green companies ultimately believe that their membership provides a competitive advantage for their business. And look, we would look to grow that percentage over time. We need to continue to evolve the program. It needs to grow and develop, because nothing stands still, and the marketplace is constantly changing and putting new demands, you know, on us as suppliers. So we need to respond to that. Thank you very much. I'll leave it there, and apologies for the technical issues.
Thank you very much, Dale. Perfect timing despite the small technical problems, so don't worry. So thanks a lot for showing this very impressive program. You touched at, I think, very interesting aspects that we will probably talk later on, the role of partnerships, which, as you know, is very close to GASL's DNA, and also this link with your graduate program and placement of graduates, and also the role of communication. It seems to be very important as well in this whole setup. So thanks a lot, and we will take up these interesting aspects later on in the discussion.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Will you be able to stay for the panel, Dale? Because
I can't say for certain yet. I'm hopeful I will. I'm just waiting. I apologize. I may need to go to a hearing in our parliament, and I'm just waiting to get confirmation. But I'll let you know.
Okay, but in any case, you will be here tomorrow. In any case,
definitely, I'll definitely be here tomorrow for the full session.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Dale. Now we move to the last presentation by Andrea Rosati from the European Federation of Animal Science. And I believe Andrea is in the US. So it's very early or very late for you, Andrea?
Well, depending on which side you see it,
Yes.
It's actually 3:35 in the morning here, or in the night, whatever. Thanks very much. And so that's for this. I'm sure that you will apologize me for my voice and for the dark background that we have it here.
We apologize for keeping you awake so late, or for
well, when I started this job 30 years ago, I knew that the science doesn't have timing. So Saturday, Sunday night, whatever, whenever it's possible, we do it, I guess.
Thank you.
Okay, but thank you anyway for your patience. I try to share my screen. See if I can make it. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes, if you can put it on slide show mode, it would be fine.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Go back first one slide. Okay, there we are. So, well, as we say before, good morning to everyone. My name is Andrea Rosati. I'm the Secretary General of EAAP, that is the European Federation of Animal Science. We are the Animal Science Network of Europe with 4,600 members and 34 country members. I guess some of you, if not all of you, knows what is EAP. We do many things, and I think we talked about what we do mainly during the presentation, so I wouldn't spend too much time about this. First of all, regarding this subject, the sustainable livestock farming system for us has always been one of our core business. We always deal with this. In almost whatever activities we used to do, and now currently in these last years, it's becoming more and more urgent. So we have, I was saying before, which are our activities, and maybe the one we are more known is the annual meeting of Animal Science, European Animal Science, and this happens this year in a couple of months. Will be early September in Porto, in Portugal. We are expecting 1,500 people. We receive 1,400 abstracts, so it'll be a full 4 days of activities, and we have 76 sessions. Actually, I was going to look yesterday before to prepare this presentation how many of a session are dedicated to sustainability, and I say that 20 or 22 more or less are directly dedicated to sustainability, and more or less the same amount are indirectly. So it's really good part of our activities. Not only this, but the Animal Science Network will also deal with international projects, mainly supported by the EU. And this is currently we are in 11 EU projects, and only for the dissemination part. And either directly or indirectly, all of this project has something to do about sustainability. So it's really our main interest. It's becoming even more evident in the last years. Being a network, I think one of the keywords is to dialogue within the network. So, and animal science, like any scientist, without discussing and dialoguing with to share scientifically based information, we are nothing. So that's what we mainly do. But not only with among scientists, we try to lobbying, especially in our case, since we are in a European organization, lobbying at EU level. Just recent experience. I'm currently, as I was saying before by our chair, in USA, attending the American Society of Animal Science Meeting conference. And even for them, for the Americans, this is one of the crucial points. Sustainability is very important. Although their research is more dedicated to industries, is more directly influenced by industry than ours, I must say that they also spend a lot of time and efforts discussing about sustainability. Well, with this dialogue, with the network, with what we are doing, we try to render the topic of sustainability the center of interest. And as I say, we try to achieve this objective. But the objective, of course, not only that, but is also to convince the decision makers, both public and private, of the importance of the global future of a sustainable animal science system. And again, the scientific network should convince the people, the policymakers, the decision makers through scientific evidence. That's the only task we have. So that's about interest. But our sphere of influence, well, I was just saying about, that we're trying to inform policymakers about the good practices for a more sustainable food systems. But this is not so easy as it appears. And in fact, I'm afraid that many times, despite the efforts we are doing as a scientist, we feel frustrated because the decision makers, sometimes they took different decisions, not only for sustainability, but this is the topic we're discussing now. And this is also because of the fact that we are different, we are talking with different language. Scientists disseminate well to scientists, other scientists, but they don't disseminate, they don't talk too much very well to civil society and then to policymakers. This is a big barrier that we feel. Discussing with American colleagues just these days, I understood that the same problem, this is the same problem they have. We see many legislation that we don't think that are appropriate or that are not following scientific-based evidence. But this is as it is. I mean, I think dissemination is a tool, and it must be done by professionals, and scientists are not professional in disseminating scientists outside of our group. Nevertheless, we should try keeping and giving what is possible, and for this reason, we try to keep informed the decision makers. We created some years ago, I think it was 10 or 12 years ago, a journal, a magazine that is named Animal Frontiers. And actually, I suggest to everyone to have a look. It goes out once every 2 months. And the peculiarity of this magazine is that it's written in easy to understand jargon, but with scientifically based evidences. So it's discussing, of course, of animal industry, livestock farming, animal science. Every issue has a different topic. Many of the issues in these 10 years were about sustainability. But we try to do it using an easy to understand jargon. And we as EAP send hundreds of these magazines every 2 months to policymakers, decision makers all over Europe, not only to Brussels, but through our national members to every European countries. Well, with all these efforts that we are doing, we try to invite and support decision makers to make EU and national legislations more to support research in sustainability. Putting sustainability at the center of our focus and explain why this is important. I think this is, we try to invite them to put, to support research. You know that most of the research in our field is public, and they require public support. So this is vital for us and for the future research in this effort. But this is for the public research. For the private research that is managed by the industries, we have to discuss and convince industries. But this was in the past. I might say that in the last 10 years, we get involvement of industries in our activities very much. So it's not too much about convincing what we are doing, but you just let them participate into what we are doing. EAP, our federation, is scientifically structured with 11 study commission. And each of these study commission have at least one industry representative, not often not one, but more, but at least one. And that is important to bring the words, the views of the industries. And also the other side is very important because these industry representatives will be a channel to discuss with industries on our topics. Now, what are our control level? Well, as I say, our network is dedicated to this activity and we of sustainability, and we do, like for every other field, working properly with specific ethics based on scientific evidence. And the objective of many researches are about sustainability. This is done not only for some specific national projects, but also, as I was saying before, at EU level through the many EU supported projects. We also do some lobbying, as I think is evident, when it is a time to discuss about the topics to support it with the EU framework programs. That is the fantastic tool of the European level to support research. We are organized, structured in a way in which the dialogue is the essence within this network. As I was saying, just one of the first few things that we say. We have the European Animal Science Meeting. This is a very good place where network is discussing, and not only during the scientific sessions, but also in the social events when the people get together even to take a coffee. I noticed that this is sometimes much more powerful, and often a moment in which people exchange views, but often this is underestimated. COVID told us that, invite us to think about other new sources of dissemination, like the one we are having now, actually, with this workshop, a remote workshop. And we start to have webinars, and every month we have a webinar that is for free to everyone can participate. And our webinars are very much, if I can say the word, populated. There are a lot of people participating. We have on average 200, 300 people, and with the top of 400 or 500 sometimes. So this is really powerful webinar with disseminated, and the webinar will remain available to everyone as a record in our website. But not only this, I mean, what we do besides the workshop, the meetings, the webinars, we send a newsletter every 2 weeks, which is very often, as you can imagine, with a lot of news. Actually, I invite GASL people to use our newsletter if you want to disseminate, because this newsletter go to our members that are 4,600. But someone say, well, you send it, but no, people don't read it. Of course, we count also how many download there is in the newsletter we send through a link. So we suppose that those who are downloading the newsletter are reading, and we have on average every week between 13 and 1,400 readers. So it's not a million of people, but for the scientific network, this is quite the largest possible that we can take. Talking again, as I was saying, I was doing this a few minutes ago with the decision makers. Well, what we do to make some policy change, or with what are our control on the policy change, we have direct contacts, not only with the EAP people, which are limited number, but with our members and with our country members. And the person who talked with us before was from Ireland, and the Ministry of Agriculture in Ireland and Chagas are the country members in Ireland, just to give an example of one of the most important countries in livestock farming in Europe. Also, we send publication, as I was saying before, hard copies, and of course, a lot of information through the newsletter to electronic copies of research and journals and magazines. And also, when we think this is a public decision maker, for the private ones, we think about industries. I said before, we are structured, organized to welcome industries in our group, and they become quite in large number now, so that we can easily say that sometimes, we are considering to be the link between pure science and application through our industry people. For the future, we also think to organize, well, we already done it, some workshops specifically for industries, but they are not in large number, I think 5 or 6, or maybe 1 or 2 more. But in the future, we plan to do many more, and going also to the agricultural affairs where many industry representatives are. And I think this is about my presentation. That's all.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you also for making our life easier with this reporting, because it feeds directly into our matrix. So that's great. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for these great insights into the EAAP. Some of us had the chance to attend the annual meeting in Davos last year. And it was indeed a very interesting event and great opportunity to see what you work on. And this is very broad and interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy, for your kind words. Davos was still affected by the COVID system, so that we are more or less 50% of the normal people we have. We plan to go back in the right shape in a couple of years.
Yeah, okay. Great. So I would like to invite the panelists to switch on their cameras. I think that's the case for all. If Dale is still here, or maybe, yeah, Dale is here. Okay, so on the panel, we have, of course, Daniel, Ulf, Dale, and Andrea. If you all manage to stay for some time, hopefully.
Still here, haven't been called away yet.
Okay. I would like to say just one word to apologize in the name of women that we do not have any lady on the panel. This is not intentional. We have invited ladies, but unfortunately they could not join today. So we have gentlemen's panel, which is fine as well, but I just wanted to make it clear that it's not intentional. Okay. With that said, I would like to, there are a few questions in the chat, but I would like to raise a first question, and it's actually quite close to the question raised by Jean-Jacques Soula from the OIE. Actually, we have seen a few examples, especially from Switzerland and Sweden, but of course also from Ireland, about best practices. So we've seen that there is a whole set of best practices in different fields. And these best practices, they allow to reduce the environmental footprint, among others, of livestock. But at the same time, we see that the progress is quite slow. So where are the current main gaps to accelerate the process? That would be my first questions. Where do you see these important gaps at the moment? Maybe Daniel first?
Well, okay. If you remember the line of the development of greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture in Switzerland, you saw this decline in the 90s, and that was basically due to efficiency gains. And once you reach a certain level in efficiency, it's getting more and more difficult to make any further progress. And I think in Western European countries, we reach this level, there's not much more to gain. Even theoretically, you might see that there's still some room for improvements, but on the ground, on the farms, it is so much more difficult because the farmers are in so many constraints. And we observed this when we work on the farms, that this is really, really very challenging. And then you have to consider that these are all natural processes and they're all interlinked, especially when it comes to greenhouse gases. You don't have just one pollutant, you have carbon dioxide, you have nitrous oxide, you have methane, all kind of processes, they're all interlinked, and these are all small screws. And maybe once you work on one specific process, you could have pollution swapping to another process, and it's so complicated, especially in practice, that I don't see, like for these technical measures, I don't see in Western European countries so much more room for improvements. I think, of course, in low and middle income countries, you can still increase efficiency tremendously, and that's the way we have to go there. But in like industrialized countries, I don't see that much room for much more improvements. So that's why I emphasize that in these countries, the food system approach is so much more important.
Wolf, would you like? Yes.
Yeah, I absolutely share the view by Daniel. I don't foresee any big change in technology that would make a tremendous difference or improvement. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I haven't seen anything such at the moment. There are maybe small things you can fix with, and it's not only nutritional magics, and so it's health and etc. However, I think also, as Daniel said, and I'm mainly working in Asian and African countries, and in these low and middle income countries, there are tremendous gains, efficiency gains to do for the sake of efficient use of natural resources and reducing the greenhouse gas emissions per produce. That's my take. So this was a long echo of what Daniel said. Sorry for that.
I'll come in, I'll be a little bit more positive. So look, there's no doubt that like there's huge potential for progress in the developing world, you know, where efficiencies aren't as great, you know, as the developed world in Asia and Africa, etc. You know, if you look at countries, I suppose then like Ireland, like New Zealand, that you know, and other countries in Europe that are have well developed, you know, livestock production systems and you know, have incorporated a lot of efficiencies into their programs, whether it be breeding or feeding, etc. I do think, you know, the technology 3NOP, you know, is going to make a significant difference. It's been approved now by the European Food Safety Authority. The company DSM in the Netherlands have huge ambitions in terms of scale up to build plants. There's going to be a plant built in Scotland. It's going to cost 100 million euros. So it's a very, very serious company. And DSM have a product 3NOP with the active ingredient called Bovaer, which can reduce methane emissions in confined systems of production by 30%. So that's not insignificant, given that methane emissions don't need to go to zero. We simply have to have an understanding around the narrative that methane emissions need to decline in order to ensure there's no further warming impact, you know, from that activity. So there's a communication challenge here around this. For us in Ireland, because we're a pasture-based livestock system, we are working very closely with the company to try and to take that product and develop a slow release bolus that would enable the product to be fed to animals over a longer period of time, and the active ingredient would be released very slowly in order to achieve that same level of methane reduction. Whether we can get right up to that 30% remains to be seen, but I would be very confident that over the course of a year, we'll at least be able to achieve a 20% reduction in methane emissions. And that for us will be a game changer, you know, out to 2030 in terms of delivering that methane reduction that scientists, environmentalists, you know, are demanding from the agriculture sector.
Yes, please, Andrea.
I try to be a little bit more provocative on this aspect and use data. There are a couple of data that are also puzzling me when we talk about greenhouse gas emission. One is that what is emitted by the livestock industry. Someone is say 16%, someone is say 18, someone say 14. So there is a big discussion on this, which honestly I don't see too much the problem, the importance of having one or more point on this on the global level. But the other important data is that only 20% of the livestock industry greenhouse gas is emitted by the Europe and North America together. So more or less the most developed countries, the most developed continents. The remaining 80% come from Asia, Africa, and South America. And with this in mind, whatever we can have, I mean, before Dale was talking about reduction of 20%, if the 20% will be reduced in where is maybe a little bit easier to apply in Europe and North America, we are talking about a reduction of 20% of the 20% of 16%, which is talking about 0.6, if I'm not wrong, more or less, of the total global greenhouse gas emission. What is the impact on the climate change, on the world in the future? Zero, nothing. So what are we talking about? So really, this is something we should consider because these are figures, these are facts. On the other side, following also what Ulf said before, this is also important that because there are continents, I'm talking about maybe Asia and Africa, and also South America, where the changing will have a much bigger impact. And that's so we as a scientific group, I think we should continue to do research on this aspect and apply well and work hard on finding solution, but more than really applying where is easy to apply but less effective, we should do application where it's more difficult to apply but much more effective. So doing science to also to show to in other parts of the world to give suggestion to them how to solve this issue. But again, the application is a very complicated. If everyone knows, I'm sure every one of us know what is the, the livestock industry in India, where there are hundreds of millions of cattle, of buffaloes, and just to give you an example, and do you think that it would be easy to apply what the research that is done now in Europe or North America? I think it would be very complicated. So I'm quite pessimistic on this aspect because, okay, science can do something, but if we applied wherever, I try to summarize, where is not so efficient, then it becomes a big barrier. I hope I make myself clear, but I'm not sure. I'm still sleepy at this time of the night.
Thank you, Andrea. Daniel, would you like to answer to Andrea?
Yeah, I think, of course, an individual country and less so an individual farmer or consumer cannot change the world. That's true. But I think it's about taking our own responsibility. Everybody has to take his responsibility, no matter how big or small it is. And that's kind of the spirit of Paris, of the climate agreement, that they said we want to have everyone on this planet on board, and everyone has to take his responsibility. And that's why they let down all the regulations. They were just let go of all of this because we want everybody on board. And if I tell the farmers in Switzerland, so you have to act on greenhouse gas, they usually tell me, well, then we're going to have higher production costs and all food will be imported from abroad. And I say, yes, but these countries from abroad, they also have to have targets. And it's not your responsibility whether they comply to that or not, but you have to take your own responsibility, no matter what the others do. You can only change your own world. And I think that's very important. So no matter how small your impact is, you should take your personal responsibility. And then I agree to what Andrea said, that of course, if you want to invest money, it makes more sense to do it in these countries where you still can improve efficiency. It's much cheaper than going for very costly technological measures in industrialized countries. I think that's something I can agree on.
Yeah. Sorry, I just a short intervention to Daniel. Of course, I don't deny that every one of us should do our job and to do it. Every single person, I fully agree on this. My point was for the second part of what he said, we should do it more efficiently, and do it more efficiently is where it's really effective than where it's a little less effective. But this doesn't mean that not every one of us should do what is our best to solve the problem.
Okay, thank you. I will come back to Jean-Jacques' question, but Brian has a question. Brian, would you like to ask your question directly?
Thank you, Nancy. Brian Lindsay from the Dairy Sustainability Framework. I'd just like to pick up on a key point that Andrea just made, and thank you for making it, Andrea. It's something that's pretty close to my heart in terms of research and development. And, I work in the dairy industry where the average herd size globally is 2 to 3 cows. Herds with over 100 cows represent less than 0.5% of all herds. How do we take research and development and technology and make it available to these smallholder farmers globally? And I think that's a challenge we all have as an industry, be it in academia or helping our supply chains make a difference. We need to be able to help those smallholder farmers access these new technologies so we can have the impact we need to. So it's more of a statement, but I'd just like to thank Andrea for picking that up because it's a really important point.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Jean-Jacques, would you like to raise your question about the shift in the system, especially in France?
Thank you, Nancy. At this stage, I don't ask for the floor. I don't have any additional question to this very interesting debate. As you know, the OIE now changes in the name WOHA, World Organization for Animal Health, involved for animal health and welfare. And indeed, climate change or climate disruption direct effect on impacts on animal health through the parasitic disease, viruses, and so on. And so we're dealing with that since the very beginning. So I thank you for this exchange webinar, and we are still committed to participate in the work of the global agenda. Thank you, over.
Okay, thank you, Jean-Jacques. I have to apologize. I think I mixed up with Jacques Lasser, who raised the question, but still, thank you very much, Jean-Jacques, for your short input. Jacques, you asked the question about shifting, about the leverage or the levies to use to shift the policies in France. You mentioned or in relation with the presentation in Switzerland and in Sweden, shifting from ruminant production in the lowland, for example, to marginal areas or to natural grassland. This would have tremendous implications, not only in Sweden and Switzerland, but in many countries, including in France. Would you like to ask your question, Jacques? Or to whom would you like to ask the question?
Okay. Thank you for giving me the possibility to ask a question. Yes, in Ulf and Daniel presentation, there was some question about the abilities to deal with feed food concurrency. That is a big problem, and especially considering grazing of harsh environment, non-eligible for cropping on one side. And on the other side, there is a question about, that is for ruminants. And there are also a question about granivores and pigs and poultry, about their concurrencies in feed food question. And in France, and this question you highlight give me the occasion to think about some scenarios that have been elaborated in France, just trying to see if it was possible to reorganize animal production systems in that way. And that was possible only if we deeply reduce the meat consumption for human food. And it seems to be a very strong lever to improve the situation regarding greenhouse gas emission, biodiversity, animal welfare, and also animal health. But that is a very, very strong change, and it needs very strong policies to reorganize this animal production sector in that way. What do you think about the abilities to use these levers?
Who would like to answer? Daniel?
Yeah, maybe I can make a start here. I think that's why I emphasize this long-term perspective. We don't have to change everything tomorrow. And we can use that, like natural processes. Say the problem now we have is that especially in dairy production, there's lots of investment. You invest in a milking robot, you invest in a stable system, and you're locked in for 30 years with that. And of course, you cannot change that from one day to the other. But so we should take advantage of this like natural processes that once say you need a new milking robot or you need a new stable system, you have to make a major investment. At this point of time, you have to reconsider, do I have to invest really in dairying, or is like, am I in an arable zone where I can do arable cropping and then maybe invest in something else, or maybe invest in photovoltaics, whatever. At this point of time, you have to make this decision. And by doing this, we can slowly enter into this transition. And I think that would be socially and economically that would be possible. We just don't have to, like, it's not, of course, not possible to make a new policy tomorrow and everything changes. But like this, I think it should be possible. And of course, the consumers, they have also to move and reduce their meat consumption. I mean, currently in Switzerland, we are 3 times above the recommended level in meat consumption, and as of course has also to change. But I think we should really apply this long-term perspective, and also in policy making, try to use these natural processes, succession of farmers, investment processes, and then set the course to this to a more sustainable system in the end.
I can come in as well, Nancy.
Yes.
Like, I suppose if you look at the IPPC, you know, what they're recommending, and all the various reports now that come out, you know, talk about, you know, the importance of sustainable diets and having more plant-based products in your diet. And I think that's all very fair. One of the things I get a little bit frustrated from is that some people, you know, conflate that with, we need to reduce, you know, livestock production. Like, in my view, if you look at OECD, you look at FAO in terms of what they're predicting for global demand, you know, for livestock products, particularly in the Asian, you know, markets, and it's very, very significant. So we probably do need to reduce consumption of animal byproducts in Western diets, in Europe, in the US. But this is solely, you know, to create some headspace where some of these products can potentially be diverted to the Asian market as demand for animal-based protein increases. But the idea that you would reduce livestock, you know, in a country to meet climate targets, that's something that, you know, I would have difficulty with. And it's something that we're even having this discussion, you know, domestically, you know, in terms of, you know, meeting our climate targets, you know, what contribution ultimately agriculture should make to that.
And if we see the figures, for example, shown by Ulf, we have seen that actually the process you described, Daniel, it is on the way in Switzerland for sure. There are less and less farmers, especially less and less dairy farmers. But at least in Switzerland, these dairy farmers, when they disinvest from dairy, they invest into suckler cow production. So it's probably also not the solution. And what we have seen all from your presentation is that the number of farmers in Sweden is increasingly low. And I guess this trend is continuing, but at the same time, the number of cows per farm is increasing. So there is no, I mean, of course, there is more efficiency, but the number of animals, is it decreasing, the number of animals, Ulf?
Yeah, yes, a little bit, but their productivity is increasing per cow, so to say. But what I tried to put forward in my very light presentation to reach out to the policymakers, Andrea, and it was to grasp that I think we miss out in our conversations very much the socioeconomic aspects of sustainability in the livestock sector. We become very environmentally oriented, where we can find hard data, and that is also the general agenda in the public. I think we think that sustainability is just environmental sustainability, and I want to take an example of when we're talking about moving our technologies and skills to middle and low income countries. The narrative is extremely important, I think. In just to take an example, in Sweden, this very low use of antibiotics. We haven't pushed, or the public hasn't pushed the farmers to use less antibiotics. It has been an initiative from the farmers themselves, and it has been based on improve animal health by other preventive measures. And then the low use of antibiotics is a kind of side effect. And I think if we are going to middle and low income countries and saying that you have to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, I doubt that maybe on the policy levels that would work. But I think it would be far, far more efficient to disseminate techniques that improve the efficiency, the productivity at the farms, because that is an economic gain for the farmers. So I think the narrative here is extremely important how we put this forward. Otherwise, it will be a blame game that, oh, you rich countries, you don't reduce your emissions, even though they are low comparative to what we produce. And so I would go for, even though I'm a veterinarian, I would say feed genetics and animal health management. I think that's great gains we can do there directly. And then, of course, I want to support Dale in it. From a global perspective, it's of course it's better if those that have the technique for low emissions produce more and give to others or sell to others. But then we have this issue of economics and trades, which is not my business. It's super complicated. Sorry for this long elaboration. Andrea.
Yes, Andrea, please. Thank you.
No, but Ulf, I just want to agree 100% with what you say. I think this is very true, and the sustainability is also very important. Socioeconomic sustainability. If we don't care of this, farmers disappear because we can do whatever we want. But farmers are there to make profit, make living for them and their family. And if we don't create the good socioeconomic sustainability for them, they will disappear. Simple as that. So that we're going to do another job, and then we create trouble at the social level and also economic level. Again, and maybe this is my main focus. I mean, we are discussing about this in Europe, in our countries, and like Dale said, no, we have to gain this less 1 or 2%, but then we have to reduce our meat production, and maybe also the meat consumption. But the major point here is the increase of population worldwide, and that happens in other continents. And even more than that, the diet changes of those people. So that's, I just, checking some figures here and there. I think this is an FAO figures in the last 60 years, but this was research done about 10 years ago. So it's a little bit old. But in 60 years, China's people increased their meat consumption per person 9 times, not 50% more, not double, 9 times. And can you imagine now there are 1.4 billion people in China? What is the impact of meat consumption? So if a few Swedish or Italian people reduce their meat consumption, the impact on the global level will be quite limited. And we have to talk about facts. Otherwise, we are making, a legend and the wrong narrative. But of course, again, I repeat this: everyone has to do our job. So if we have to reduce meat consumption, we have to do it. But we don't have to think that this will solve the problems of the world.
Andrea, this brings me to one of my questions. What I observed from the presentation, especially the one from Switzerland, is actually there is like a jungle of different initiatives. There are different frameworks to assess sustainability, different tools, different approaches, and so on. We've seen actually 2 quite contrasting examples. We have seen the example from Ireland with one program which seems to be very integrated, holistic, and comprehensive, where all actors are on board with a very specific focus also on making sure that exported products, all products, but also for export, are labeled under this origin green. And in Switzerland, we have which is a tiny country, of course, federal. We have so many different initiatives. Overall, how can we also, us from GASL, how can we convey science-based, evidence-based messages which are not simplistic, but at the same time which are understandable by the wider audience, especially consumers? Personally, I think this is one of the main challenges, and I would like to have your views on that. Maybe Dale and Daniel first. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. Like, I think for the livestock industry, for livestock sector, we do need to kind of focus in, I think, on a couple of key issues that we can kind of, develop, I think, a communication strategy around, that everyone can kind of coalesce around. And one of the things that I think we should look at, and it may even come up in the context of the MSP meeting later in the year, is the whole area of nutrition and the importance of livestock protein for nutrition, particularly for certain cohorts, whether that be the elderly or young children, developing children. And I think that's something that it's harder to counter that narrative. It's harder for people with very, very strong views from an environmental NGO perspective to counter the nutritional benefits of livestock. So I think as an industry, that's something that we kind of need to look at, very closely.
Okay, Daniel?
Yeah, maybe the fact that we have so many seemingly isolated initiatives in Switzerland, they're not really isolated because there's a lot of exchange between all these initiatives. But that's mainly, most of these initiatives they're funded by the Federal Office of Agriculture, the so-called resource programs. So these the project leaders, they get money for implementing these projects. And the purpose behind of that is that with these pilot projects, we can explore the possibilities, what works in practice and what doesn't work. And eventually, later on, that these measures that work, they will enter the agricultural policy and they will at some time get mandatory for everybody. So like one of the first measures now is that on a national level, that the farmers could apply for subsidy if they keep their dairy cows longer. So longevity of dairy cows, or the grassland-based. There's a program now on the national level for grassland-based milk and meat production. So that's kind of the approach behind of it. That it takes just a lot of time until these measures get into general policy making. And if we go to climate change, the question is if we do have enough time to wait for so long. But that's kind of the logic behind of it. I mean, if it comes to greenhouse gas emission, we are only just starting to exploring these things. Other environmental problems such as ammonia and eutrophication, we have longer time already working on that. There are some more prescription on a national level there, but if it comes to greenhouse gases, we're just initiating these. And policy making, that's a very, very slow process. And it takes a lot of time to get that.
Yes, unfortunately, at the same time, research in a way gets shortcut by different initiatives. I mean, you are probably aware of this controversy about, there was some publicity made by the, I think, the Federation of the milk producers, saying that the milk production is favoring biodiversity. It was about 2 weeks ago in Switzerland, and then they were accused of giving misleading information to the consumers and so on. So, I mean, how can research be, because I guess there is a lot of evidence already. We know a lot of things. How can we accelerate this process? I'm not talking only about Switzerland. In general, how can we make sure that whatever evidence we have already can be channeled in I don't know, effective and efficient way, and as soon as possible to the consumer? Because I get consumers get more and more confused every day. That's my impression.
That's why we need one or two key messages, because unfortunately, the consumer globally is not able to simply process and understand, vast quantities of information. So as an industry, we need to really focus in on a couple of key messages, and then everyone needs to coalesce around them. In the United States and Europe, we obviously have to lead that, but we have to bring everyone with us globally.
Mm-hmm. So that's a great point for GASL, because communication is a very important point of GASL, and we keep this in mind for that. Andrea, you want to react? Yes.
Yeah, I just want to repeat what I said during my presentation. That let's not make presentation and dissemination done by scientists. They're not able to do it, and I'm representing them. I mean, they are often misleading people. But in an honest way, I mean, in good faith. And first of all, science doesn't give the truth as the layer people think. Civil society say, oh, scientists say that. Then here another scientist say something different. Oh, well, what's wrong here? You know, there's a global climate change we are discussing for decades, since late 70s of the last centuries, and we agree only the last years because it's so evident. But there was a discussion among scientists, do we really have a global climate change? And until really recently. And so, but this is part of science. We advance because we deny what the other already say, or we change what the other say. I mean, Karl Popper said this maybe not 100 years ago, but almost. And we keep going in this way. But civil society don't understand it. If you are not in science, you don't understand why scientists can be denied in what he says. Besides the fact that the way that we as scientists, the words we are using are the wrong ones. As they'll say, we need to have one or two key messages. The key messages must be done by someone who is professional. So not a scientist, please.
Okay, good point taken. I would like to come back to one of the aspects highlighted about the social and economic pillars of the sustainability. And that goes with this food system transformation highlighted by Daniel. So taking the example of Switzerland or other countries where grassland plays a very important role, in many of these countries, natural grassland are actually in marginal areas. And in many of these countries, marginal areas are the ones where the farmers stop first because the conditions are harder and more difficult. So what would be measures, policy measures or other measures to make sure that livestock production can be sustained in these areas so that they do not compete with the lowland areas, with the cropland? What would be measures, concrete measures to keep the farmers there?
I mean, first, I think if you look at it on a macroeconomical perspective, we can say that the consumers is willing to pay a certain amount of his household budget for food. And also the policymaker, the government is willing to pay a certain amount of subsidies to the farmers. And I don't see any reason why this total amount of money that is directed towards the farmers should be reduced. We just have to channel it in the right direction. And so this social or this economical perspective, at least when it comes to Switzerland or Western European countries, I don't see any reason why this should be a problem, because we are willing to pay that. I mean, food is such a valuable thing and we should pay an adequate price for that. And we are willing to do that. So we just have to direct this flow of money towards activities that lead to a sustainable food system. And that means like supporting production of feed on arable land, kind of like this shouldn't be subsidized. And that would also prevent that then the farmers that are marginal lands or grasslands that produce milk there, they are not anymore in competition with these other farms. That might be more effective, if kind of, but not sustainable. So like the policy framework should guarantee that this is possible. And I think, again, this is not possible tomorrow, but in a long-term perspective, we should move in this direction. And I think then this should be totally possible, that we have more extensive kind of compared today in Western Europe, livestock farming on grasslands, but with still the possibility to create sufficient income.
I think in Ireland, like we have this challenge as well, and I think the nature restoration law that the Commission proposed last week is going to have a role here as well. I get concerned at times with global statistics. Like global statistics can they can say a lot of things, and I do wonder sometimes about the data behind some of them. One of the misunderstandings I find is that there's a lot of people out there that think you can replace livestock and grassland and grow arable crops. In the case of Ireland, we have a livestock industry it developed because the land type and the soil type, it wasn't capable of producing those food-based, you know, arable crops. And sometimes there's a lack of understanding, you know, around that, you know, and I think it's probably replicated in many countries around the world that livestock developed the way it did because of the land topology and the land and the soil type. So again, that's something that we need to kind of communicate clearly to the consumer, because they look at it and say, oh, well, vast quantities of land are being used for livestock production and it's inefficient. Quite often, livestock are the only agricultural industry or agricultural sector that can utilize that grassland and convert them into high quality proteins.
Okay, I see the time running. It's 11:30. So I think we have to start closing this panel discussion. There is one question. Yes, the very first question from Dale to Daniel. Are there legal targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in agriculture? Daniel,
I was just going to write an answer, but I can briefly explain it orally. No, like the climate strategy for agriculture in Switzerland, that's so far it's still a declaration of interest, we could say. So there's no legal binding, not yet a legal binding target. It might come in the future. We don't know yet. But during the latest agricultural policy reform, we have a legal binding target for the nitrogen surplus. So that also plays into greenhouse gas emission via the nitrous oxide emissions. And there are other legal provisions like balanced fertilizer management that the farmers have to have, and a couple of provisions that go in this direction. But like for the overall target on greenhouse gas emission, it's not legally binding.
No, that's fine. I just asked because I say we're going through the process at the moment. We have a legal target of reducing emissions by 22 to 30% in agriculture by 2030, which is incredibly ambitious. It's probably as ambitious as any target around the world in terms of a pasture-based economy. And what our government now are deciding over the coming weeks is deciding, well, is the percentage reduction in agriculture going to be closer to 22% or 30% or somewhere in between? So we're going through that process, you know, at the moment, and it's very different. A 30% reduction in agricultural emissions is quite different to a 22% in terms of the technologies we have available to us at the moment to abate emissions. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we come to an end of the panel discussion. Thanks a lot. I just make you aware of a comment of Brian Lindsay, a positive comment actually, to show that we still keep hope that reducing emission intensities is possible worldwide, and not only in our context, but also in other countries. So I let you read this comment or this statement of Brian, which is based on a FAO publication. With this, I would like to close this panel and warmly thank Daniel, Andrea, Ulf, and Dale for participating, and also the participants for the questions. And I would leave the floor to Fritz, who is our rapporteur today, and will give synthesis of today's presentations and discussions. Fritz, I leave you
just lost
the floor, and I thank all the participants.
We can't hear you, Fritz, just in case you're wondering.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I try to summarize a bit what we have done today. Nancy introduced the meeting and Shirley sets the scene and puts this regional meeting into the context of the GASL and the upcoming MSP meeting in early October in Ireland. Then we heard from Daniel Brecher, Agroscope, the Focus Switzerland. He showed very nicely the development of greenhouse gas emissions in Switzerland and the reduction potential and ongoing projects. And he mentioned very strongly that it's a long-term perspectives. And he also mentioned environmental options of the Swiss population diets. And he showed very interesting figures, what it would mean also in possibly reduction of livestock production. Then we had Ulf, the country focus of Sweden. He showed the benchmarking sustainability in the Swedish livestock sector. And he mentioned that Sweden has very rigorous standards. And we have heard from him that the use of antibiotics in Sweden has been reduced in comparison to other countries to a very low level. That also shows that there is a potential for change. We are aware that in Sweden we have very dedicated, well-educated farmers, and he also mentioned that animal source foods are challenged. Criminal attacks by activists are happening. He mentioned then the game changes like Corona and the Ukraine war. The consequences are that reduction of pigs and poultry production, and that grain growers are the winners because prices are going up. And he also explained that we come from a food security concern to societal public concern. Then Dale Cramen, country focus Ireland, he used Origin Green as the basis for his presentation. And he mentioned that Ireland is an export-oriented agriculture. The standards are very high. There are sustainability charters, the food vision of 2030 sustainability strategy at farm level, company level, domestic and global. He also referred to the SDGs as important framework, and also importance of proper and easy to understand communication to consumers. Then we go to Andrea Rosati from the EAAP. He mentioned that sustainability is an overarching topic in the EAAP. The EAAP has an excellent reach within the European livestock sector. And in short, the EAAP makes the sector and its challenges visible among the scientists, but also among the general public. Then I move to the panel. This has been a challenge to summarize this while we were discussing. It was mentioned that improvements in Europe have limits. A lot has already been done. Examples, Switzerland and Sweden. Efficiency gains in low and middle income countries have a good potential, and we should actually focus on this. Ireland, Dale said he is a bit more optimistic. Countries have huge ambitions, also companies. He mentioned DSM, and there is no doubt emissions need to decline. He also mentioned that 20% is emitted in Europe and North America, and 80% other parts of the world, namely Africa and Asia, where we have enormous potential for improvement. Nevertheless, countries, farmers have to take the responsibility, even if the prospects are low. We also have to look into food competition. Further, the panel mentioned that long-term perspectives are important. While we are investing, look into alternatives, not just take the old system and renew it. We have to better include consumers into the discussion. We need to reduce consumption of animal source food in Western societies to make room for Asian and possibly African consumers. The socioeconomic aspects are not sufficiently considered. We have to look at the relationships of size and consumption, for instance, Asia and Europe. We mentioned that there is a jungle of initiatives, challenges with consumers. We focus on nutrition. Pilots will eventually enter into policy. For instance, longevity of dairy cows was mentioned by Daniel, but he also mentioned that policy take a long time to be implemented. How to communicate? We have to make use of few key messages. And Andrea said scientists are poor implementers. They should not do that. Somebody else should take over. And communication needs to be professional. Towards the end, we mentioned that grassland direct the public money towards more sustainable systems and do not grow grass on arable land. And the policy framework should make this possible. That's how far I got in my summary. It was very quick and dirty. And thank you very much for all your presentations and the interesting discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fritz, for this excellent summary of our discussions. I think we can take a lot of elements to feed into our work within GASL, especially these communication challenges are very important. So I'm very confident that we can make use of many inputs given today. I would like to thank everyone for this very interesting and complete discussion. And I hope to see you tomorrow for the continuation of this meeting with the focus more on industry and producers. I see a few faces who will be here tomorrow, like Emmanuel and Shin, who will make a presentation tomorrow. So I hope to see all the others as well. And of course, additional people hopefully will join tomorrow. Thanks a lot, Eduardo, for your support. And I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So.
Okay.